Today, we are diving into one of the most incredible transformations that happens inside the human brain, how we learn to think during our teenage years. And look, it's not just about cramming more facts into our heads. It's a total rewiring of the operating system. To really get our heads around it, we're going to look at the work of the absolute legend of psychology, Jean Piaget.
So let's start with the big question. What really separates the way a teenager thinks from the way a little kid thinks? You might think it's just about knowing more stuff, right? But the change is so much deeper than that. We're talking about a massive leap into a whole new way of seeing and processing the world around us.
All right, so the key that unlocks this question comes from Piaget. He called this period the formal operational stage. And that's exactly what it is, a brand new world of thought opening up, a world that goes way beyond what's right in front of you and into the realm of what's possible. So Piaget says this stage kicks in around age 12 and goes through the teen years. And the two big ideas here are 1, thinking gets way more independent, and 2, you can start using logic on abstract concepts. This is the moment a person can really start to wrestle with huge ideas like philosophy or justice or even higher math without needing a physical object to think about.
Think of it like this. A child's thinking is pretty much stuck in the here and now. Their logic works on things they can actually see and touch. But for an adolescent, their thinking isn't just about what is, it's about what could be. They can play with hypotheticals and apply logic to ideas themselves. And here's a weird twist we're going to get into. Egocentrism actually makes a comeback.
So, how does this whole transformation actually play out? Well, Piaget breaks it down for us. He points to 5 major cognitive advances that basically add up to a whole new mental toolkit for the adolescent. You can honestly think of them as new mental superpowers. And here they are. This is our roadmap for the next few minutes. We're going to look at thinking about possibilities, wrapping your head around abstract ideas, something called metacognition, thinking in multiple dimensions, and finally, seeing the world less in black and white and more in shades of gray. Okay, first up, hypothetical thinking. This is the what-if engine of the brain firing up. A child is mostly grounded in what's real, what's right in front of them. But an adolescent can suddenly explore a whole universe of possibilities. They can imagine different futures, create theories, and think way beyond the obvious. And this is huge. I mean, this is the very foundation of scientific reasoning. But on a more personal level, it's what lets a teenager actually plan for their future in a serious way. They're not just passengers anymore. They can start to be the architects of their own lives. All right, on to our second superpower, thinking about abstract ideas. This is where the mind can finally engage with concepts that you can't touch or see. We're talking about big things like justice or faith or freedom. And you see this pop up everywhere in the teen years, right? It's why they suddenly get the double meaning in a joke or really understand a metaphor. It's also why they can get so passionate about big social issues, arguing about politics, questioning their beliefs, digging into morality. They're not just being told the rules anymore. They're trying to figure out the principles behind the rules. Now, our third advance is a total game changer. It's called metacognition. And put simply, it's thinking about your own thinking. It's like your brain suddenly develops an awareness of itself. You can step back, look at your own thought process, and even start to manage it. It's pretty wild. And that brings us to number 4. Thinking becomes multidimensional. A younger kid tends to see things in a very one-track way. They'll focus on one part of a problem. An adolescent, though, can suddenly hold multiple ideas and perspectives in their head at the same time. It's like their brain's processor got a massive upgrade. And this is absolutely crucial for social life. It's why a teenager can understand that a person isn't just nice or mean, but is actually this complex mix of different traits. It lets them see an argument from another person's point of view, which of course leads to much more sophisticated and, sometimes much more complicated friendships and relationships. And finally, our 5th cognitive leap is relativism. This is the big shift away from the black and white thinking of childhood. Teenagers start to realize that truth isn't always so simple, that it can depend on the situation, and that there are often a bunch of different, valid ways to look at the same thing. This is the classic question everything phase, and it makes perfect sense. They're much more likely to challenge what they're told and stop accepting things as absolute facts. This can be when they start to look at their parents' values and think, maybe that's just your truth, not the truth. Okay, so remember how I mentioned that egocentrism makes a weird comeback?
Now, this isn't a step backward. A psychologist named David Elkind, building on Piaget's ideas, pointed out that this new kind of egocentrism is actually a direct side effect of having these new mental superpowers, especially metacognition. So here's the logic. Because adolescents can now think so much about their own thoughts, they just sort of assume that everybody else must be thinking about them too, all the time. This creates this feeling of being constantly on stage, performing for what Elkind brilliantly called the imaginary audience. And that right there explains so much of that intense self-consciousness that is just classic teenage behavior. The feeling that everyone is watching you, judging your clothes, your hair, what you just said. That's the imaginary audience at work. It's a totally normal, even if it's a pretty painful part of growing up. So, we've just laid out this incredibly powerful, sophisticated new way of thinking. It really seems like the peak of the mountain, right? The final destination for cognitive development. But what if it's not? What if not everyone actually gets there? Take a look at this number, 35%. Just let that sink in for a second. That's right. Studies have found that only about 35% of high school graduates in industrialized countries are consistently using this formal operational thinking. So this mental pinnacle we've been talking about, it's nowhere near universal. And this points to a really critical difference. It's the difference between capability and performance. It's better to think of the formal operational stage as a potential that opens up, not a destination everyone automatically arrives at. A teenager gets the capacity for this kind of thinking, but whether they actually use it, well, that's a whole other story. And so that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative question to chew on. If a huge chunk of the adult population doesn't consistently operate at this level of abstract hypothetical thought, what does that mean for us? What should that imply about how we set up our schools, how we talk about politics, or even just our basic expectations for how people make decisions in society? It's a massive question, and it all comes from understanding this one critical stage of development.